put up an Excel template. It's a 3-week template. For this, just one of your final assignments, I'm going to have you write a 3-week program for yourself. I just sent an email about that. So what I'm looking for is at least 3 days over the course of 3 weeks. So you're writing up 3 weeks, technically 9 different days of training. You can add more days of training if you'd like, but just fill in the entirety of the template that's in there. Okay. That's pretty straightforward. You're just filling in what are you going to do for the next 3 weeks for exercise. But if you have any questions where that might not make sense, just let me know. So let's cover the study guide. And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask them. So let's start out with the first point. The first point is you just need to be aware of what different training variables are. So can anyone give me an idea on, or just throw out a couple of training variables? You can type it in the text box. You can say it out loud. What are the different training variables that we have? Yeah, so you could say frequency, tempo, intensity. So that's like load. Load's one of them. What else? Okay, so you all already know the answer to this one. It's because whenever you write up programs, you're putting in training variables. So you're putting in reps, sets, load, rest periods. You're putting in all of that. Exercise selection, that's another training variable too. So just think it's anything that you can modify in a program, that's a training variable. Okay, and then that kind of leads to the next one, and this relates to the videos that I sent you. So what training variables can you modify other than load? So let's say you don't have any load. So what can you actually change? So Pablo, you wrote down range of motion. Yeah, that's great. And you can even change the exercise, so you can change the biomechanics of the exercise. So for example, maybe I'm doing a squat and then I change it to a squat where I'm sitting back more. Maybe I do a heels elevated squat where my knees are coming forward more. So it's the same exercise, quote unquote, but you can change the biomechanics of it. So then other things would be training around pain and exercise selection. We just recently went over that. So let's just say somebody has low back pain and it's flexion based. What exercises do we want to avoid? So for example, if flexion causes or makes the problem worse, we want to avoid exercises that put that person in low back flexion. So also we're going to talk a little bit about how different exercise variations place different types of stress on the body. So you just look at that image right there, we would say, okay, so which one do you think puts the most stress on the low back? And that's actually an exact question out of there. So which one places the most stress on the low back? And I think you all probably know the answer to that one, but if anyone wants to give a crack at it, you can definitely answer, or you can type it in. Not sure what 2 means, but I would say it's either left, middle, or right. So next, no, so the correct answer is the one on the far right places the most stress on the low back. If we look at this, if we look at the moment arm at the low back, it's going to be the biggest because the hips are back further. Okay, next, what is muscle function? So I'm going to give you a few examples for what these questions are going to look like. I might say, what's the exact function of a muscle? So I might ask you, what's the exact function of the quadriceps? Something similar to what you've seen before. Or I might give you an example where I say, let's just say you're doing a deadlift. Give me 2 muscle groups that's working. So you're going to need to know muscle function, and then also based on whatever exercise is on there, based on whatever exercise is on there, you're going to have to tell me what muscles are being worked. Okay, so the next one is training principles, and you're gonna find that Nick Tominello Personal Training Quarterly piece. So what are training variables? So you have examples like specificity, individualization. You have progressive overload, and then also variation. So those are going to be our training principles that we're working off of. So make sure you read that Nick Tominello Personal Training Quarterly article, and that is actually still in the midterm folder. Okay. Okay, so I kind of said that what muscles are working with specific exercises. Great. Okay, next is examples of training splits. So if you remember, there were several different examples of training splits. So for example, full body is a training split. You could do upper lower. That's a training split. And then just based on that, we can go down a little bit, and we're just going to say what are some specific movement categories. So for example, what are the movement categories? Well, I can push and I can pull, and I can do that vertically and horizontally. I can do hinges, which is more like the deadlift movement, so Romanian deadlift, or squat. So those are four main movement categories. You're going to be asked to identify common errors in specific movements. So that would be if somebody's doing a squat, what are some common errors that you might see in the squat? If someone's doing a deadlift, what are some common errors that you might see in the deadlift? You're going to watch a video of somebody and you're going to say, what are the errors? And then what might you do to correct that? Okay. We're going to talk about exercise selection based on skill level, and that kind of goes into that previous point. If someone is not doing a good job with a certain exercise, how might you regress that exercise for that person? Then within the coaching exercises lectures, we're going to talk about internal and external focus of attention, and then which one is actually better for force production. So when you focus internally or you focus externally, which one is going to lead to greater force production? Next is going to be, what is periodization? So I'm just looking for a definition, and the most basic definition is periodization is the systematic modification of training variables. Okay. Next, it's going to be name exercise variations of common movement. So all I mean by that is we're talking about changing the biomechanics of an exercise. So if I'm talking about doing a squat, what are different variations on that exercise? Okay. And I realize I put training splits twice. Okay, so those are the big things that I want you to be aware of. Does anyone have any questions on that? What questions do we have on the final? Last day of class. Yeah, Kristen, final will be similar format to the midterm. Yep. So that one is in it's look in the midterm folder, and it's under the personal training quarterly article. So what are training principles? So one training principle is specificity. Okay, so I'll give you the names of them, but just make sure you look into what they actually mean. So we have specificity, we have individualization, we have progressive overload, and then we also have variation. So those are the training principles that I'm talking about. So those are whenever you're writing a program up, you need to be aware of those training principles. Kristen, I'm just gonna keep it open for 24 hours instead, so you don't necessarily have to do it. I'll post it. I'll post it in the morning on Friday. I'll let people have the whole day for it. Yep. All right. So Jade, so movement categories. So think about all of the exercises that you can do. Generally speaking, they're going to fall into a specific pattern. Okay. So you have, let's just say you're doing a bench press. So the movement category that a bench press is in, is the same category that a push-up's in, and that's going to be a push, specifically horizontally. Okay. Then if you think about a different kind of push, you could do a vertical push. So a vertical push is something like an overhead press. All right. So then you have your pulling movements. So if I was doing a row, that would be an example of a horizontal pull. Okay. And then if I was doing something like a lat pull down or a pull up, that's an example of a vertical pull. So those are our upper body movements. Then you have lower body movements. So lower body movements, we can really break them down into, is it a squat pattern? Is it a hinge pattern? Or you could also say, is it single leg? So with the squat pattern, I mean, that's just squat exercises. With the hinge pattern, that's deadlift exercises. So that's where we're imagine you're pushing your hips backwards. You're probably feeling it more in your hamstrings and your back. Does that make sense? Great. You're welcome. What other questions do we have? Yep. You're talking about the image that's up here, the squatting image? Okay. So which one biomechanically is going to put the most stress on the low back? So you see this line right here, right? The dotted line, and then you also see this solid line, right? Okay, so the distance where the distance between those two represents the moment arm at the knee. So if you look at the one all the way on the left, that's the front squat. That's got the biggest distance between where that load actually is and where the knee joint is. So that one has has the biggest external moment arm at the knee, which means it's going to place the most stress on the quads. So when you do something like a front squat, you're working your quads more. Okay. But now if you imagine another line where the hips are, from where the load is. So if the hips are, I don't even know if you can see my arrow, but where the hips are to where that dotted line is on the front squat, that's pretty small. So it's less stress on the low back. But as you see, as you change the exercise variation, that person's leaning forward more. Their knees aren't going as far forward, but they're leaning forward more. So when you lean forward more, you're placing more stress on your low back. Make sense? Yep. All right. What other questions do we have? So again, the final is going to be on Wednesday. What we'll do on Monday is I'll join into Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, and what we'll do is I will give you the opportunity to ask me questions about that 3-week program that I want you to get done. So again, the 3-week program, it's for yourself. So you're writing a program for yourself, not for your partner. I'm gonna I will put that as an assignment that you can submit on Blackboard, and then for Jade, I'm just gonna have it due at the end of the semester. So I'm not gonna make it due on Wednesday. If you get it done on Wednesday, that's fine, but I'll give you more time.